I have a small request, and that's just that when you ask questions of Mr. Astorino, I'm sure there'll be one or two anyway, that you identify yourself before asking the question. I'm going to give you a very abbreviated background of Mr. Astorino. He was elected in 2009. He was educated at Fordham University, has a major in communications, minored in Spanish and political science. He was, at a very young age, at 21, was elected to the board in Mount Pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
He also served there on the town council and became, I think, deputy supervisor and was elected to the board, the county board of legislators in 2008? 2003, okay. He was in the private sector in radio, and I believe helped set up ESPN in New York radio, and was the executive producer of the Michael Kay Show. So, a big private life, and you don't want to hear from me, so I'm going to turn this over. Thank you very much.
I love coming to meet with various groups of people. I think it's important that I have access to people and you have access to me, because that's where we continue to learn and we can put away some of the rumors that inevitably get started and perpetuate in politics or in government. Quite frankly, we just came off the budget season and there were a lot of different misperceptions of what we tried to do and what we did do. So let me give you a quick broad overview of where we're at after 2 years. Now, I got elected in '09 and got sworn in January of 2010, and it's, like anyone who is getting into or has been in government these days at any level, it is the most challenging times that we have. We've got a federal government that's in flux, and we've got a state government that I believe is for the first time going in the right direction now. I think where they're trying to start living within their means in some way, shape, or form. There are some very big problems at the state level which definitely affect us on the county and local level. Pensions, which clearly are in its current system unsustainable. Everyone knows it now. How do you fix it? That's really the issue. Medicaid and the social safety net, which we have kept strong in here, but have costs associated with it that have to be reined in, have to be restructured to do two things: to make sure that we could afford it, because as we say, there really is no such thing as an essential service if you can't afford it. And that's really what we're dealing with today in government, is expenses have far exceeded anyone's ability to pay for them. And so we've got to figure out how to keep essential services, and I define essential services like a bus system that gets the poorest of the poor to work, that gets employers to have their employees come so it keeps businesses open. That's essential in my view. We can talk about, whenever I come on the Sound Show, we can talk about the big old white elephant in the room, and that's right north on Route 1 a couple of miles, called Playland. I love Playland, but Playland is not an essential service to government. People's lives will continue if Playland is changed in some way. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't keep Playland open. We're trying to do that. We're trying to reinvent the property so we don't sustain multiple million-dollar losses every year. And remember, when we lose millions and millions of dollars every year on the amusement park, that's got to come somewhere. Now, does it come from essential services, or does it come from tax increases? Those are really the issues. So we're trying to fix Playland so we could have a great place to go to, because I remember Playland growing up as well. I've been there since I was a little kid, having been born and raised in Westchester. So I want to fix Playland too, but we got to do it right. So we have these essential services that have to be sustained and kept, but we also are bumping into the ability for those of us in this room and around the county to actually pay for them, and that is through property taxes. And as we know, we've heard it time and time again, Westchester is the highest tax county in America. And that's not always a good thing. That's a detriment in many ways, because as people leave here, it leaves a hole in many communities. It also leaves less people paying the bills for those who truly need it. So we have to really find that balance of how to pay for what we need and to some extent what we want versus what we can afford. And that's really what the discussion is on all levels of government today, and certainly here in Westchester. So I came into office in 2010 in the storm of the economic downturn, And it was the first thing that we had a major budget deficit, which we had to grapple with. We had another major budget deficit this year and next year, which we're dealing with and have dealt with. The first year, I got into office, and the Board of Legislators was from a different party, Democratic Party, supermajority. So there were 12 Democrats, 5 Republicans on the county board. Now, 12 and 6 are the magic numbers. You need 12 votes to pass borrowing. So if you're going to bond, you need 12 votes. 6 is the number to sustain vetoes or to not pass things. And so for the first 2 years of my term, the majority party that had been there for many years, I walked into, and so a lot of the things that we tried to do to curtail some of the spending, which would control the taxes and preserve essential services, was simply overridden on some of the things I tried to stop or slow down. But in this past election, the balance, I think a little more balance was restored in that there were 2 pickups by the Republicans, so now it's 10-7. And I think that's healthier because now everyone actually has to sit at the table and discuss things, and we could do things as we just did with this budget in a bipartisan way. And that's how we're going to tackle problems, because not one party, whether it's Republican or Democrat, conservative or liberal, not one party or one philosophy has a grip on the right ideas. It just doesn't. And so when we can actually get together and figure out where we need to go and how to get there, with everybody pitching in, we can accomplish things, which we just did. And in this budget, last year, I came in and sort of the past practices of the previous administration were perpetuating, even though the county had made a major change in putting me in to try to make some changes, fiscal especially. And that led to a very contentious first year. It led to 247 vetoes that I had to issue in the budget last year, most of which were overridden. But it was, look, here are the problems. We have a major deficit last year. We've got to fix it. By law, we have to have a balanced budget. We can't keep spending the way we've been spending, certainly when it comes at the risk of reducing the essential services that are needed in this community and in this county. Coupled with a housing settlement, which we can talk about in a little while, with a playland amusement park that is losing money by the millions and needs to be fixed. So there was a lot of issues that we had to deal with. So the first year, quite frankly, none of us did it well. We made changes, but there was a lot of fighting publicly and not. Some of it was healthy, though. I mean, I think for the first time in 12 years, you actually had both points of views being presented to the public, and the public could decide what they thought the direction should be. And I think in this last election, the public said, you know what, we need a little more balance, and so everyone would come to the table. So when the past elections happen, and in January coming up, there'll be 4 new members, 2 new Democrats, 2 new Republicans, and so there's a 10-7 board where vetoes actually could be sustained, which means the majority party actually needs to discuss things with us, and that's healthy. So in this past budget, which we just, the board about a week ago just passed, I presented a budget November 15th, which reduced spending, which held the line of taxes for the second year in a row, and preserved the social safety net. For second year in a row, we did not reduce by $1 the property tax money that goes towards the Department of Social Services. So the programs that we provide for those most in need were not touched for the second year in a row. We did make changes within the budget. We had to, of course. We had to find savings because this year we had over $100 million deficit we had to make up. The previous year was $166 million. That's a lot of money, even for us. Our budget when I came in the door was $1.8 billion. We're about $1.7 billion right now. So there's a lot of money that goes towards the needy. And there's a lot of things that we do that, quite frankly, we have to decide whether we can still afford to do them, and if we do, at what expense. So this past budget I released in November, which got a lot of attention. There were 3 public hearings where a lot of people came out. Our biggest issue is the cost of labor. I think everyone's grappling with that right now, where we have a workforce that does not pay a penny for their health care. Now, in today's economy and in today's day and age, that is increasingly rare, where the employee does not pitch in anything for their own health care. Now, what we were asking is just to be reasonable and for the same amount that Governor Cuomo negotiated with the CSEA union on the state level, where they actually have been paying for quite a while. Most teachers, most firefighters, most police officers, sanitation on local levels, they're all paying or have been something for their health care. But in the county, the over 5,000 employees that Westchester County employs has never paid at all for anything. And that's a big expense, over $100 million to us. I say us because everyone in this room is paying 100% of the county workforce's health care. And a family plan is close to $21,000 now. Plus all of the retirees who forever will receive free health care. So we've got almost 20,000 people on free health care. It's just not sustainable anymore. And when you throw in pensions, which this year our county pension bill was $68 million. In 3 years, not 30, 3 years. We'll all be here, God willing. We'll all be here in 3 years. It's going to go from $68 million to over $100 million, our bill just for pensions. So, again, when you have to add that kind of money for pensions and health care, where we have no say, it's got to come from somewhere. So we either have to find money within our own budget, which means reducing programs, or we've got to continue to do what had been done in the past, which is chasing everybody away, and that's raise taxes. So I've said no to Plan B, to raising taxes. We've got to live within our means, and that means sometimes there's going to be some unhappy people, most likely those affected, which in this case would be the workers. Now, I could say this pretty easily. The workers themselves, the county workers, they understand. They know, and they've said to me, because I've had public meetings with them. I went to the county center, and I had a town hall meeting 3 times so far. First time, 1,000 employees showed up, and I said, here are the numbers. The numbers aren't going to lie. I know in the private sector or the real world, 1 + 1 = 2. I mean, my son is, as I said, he's in 3rd grade. My daughter's in 1st grade, and they're learning, and they found out that 1 + 1 = 2 no matter what. The problem with government, oftentimes at any level, 1 + 1 could equal whatever you want it to be, and that's a problem today. But the numbers don't lie when you do them the right way, and we showed, and most of the employees understood, and I think they're willing to pitch in now. The problem is the union leadership is not bending, and as such, we've had to have some layoffs last year and this year, which is the last thing that I or anyone wants to do. But when you are bumped up against costs that you cannot afford anymore, the average employee in Westchester, the county employee, those working for Westchester County, makes as a base salary almost $71,000. When you add the fringe costs, the pension costs, the health care costs attached to each person, it comes to an average of $110,000 an employee. Now, you take the same private sector employee working in Westchester. Now, this is an average, but the private sector person working in Westchester, so not somebody here who goes to Manhattan and works for Goldman Sachs. It's somebody who works in Westchester, is making about $63,000, and that person has been and continues to pay for their own health insurance and has no guaranteed pension. So the old myth that the municipal or the county worker was not paid well and didn't make money and didn't have good benefits is no longer true. And it's to the point now it's become so far imbalanced in favor that the people paying the tab can no longer afford it. So all we're asking for is for the county employees to start paying for their health care just like everybody else. And if that were to happen, everyone would win. There would be no layoffs or minimal. We would continue to have the services that we have today, and you and I would not get stuck with the tab that increasingly is becoming more and more expensive. So that's sort of the battles that we're having right now. It's not pleasant, but it's really the arguments that's being had everywhere in the country. Rhode Island just passed, and it was a Democratic state treasurer, an independent governor, and an overwhelmingly Democratic legislature just passed reform to the pension system in Rhode Island, because they're looking at the same thing where municipalities are ready to go bankrupt. And the system in Rhode Island, the state pension system, is collapsing. The unfunded liabilities are billions. What we actually owe to people in the future years is in the billions. And so it's a harsh reality, but we can no longer have government by ostrich. We can no longer stick our head in the sand and say it'll go away, the economy will get better, these problems really don't exist, they're not as bad. They are terrible. And nobody's at fault. It's been the past 20 or 30 years where these decisions by leaders on both sides of the aisle have made that we are dealing with today. But today, make no mistake, is when we have to deal with them. Because, as I just mentioned, I have little kids. I was fortunate, as I bet a lot of you are, to have been born and raised in Westchester, to live here. And there is no other place in the world, and I've been able to travel the world, there's no other place in the world I would rather live. I truly mean that. I mean, you just look a little east of this and you have one of the most beautiful sights you will see in the Long Island Sound. You go on the other side and you have the Hudson. And this county is amazing because you have urban settings, you have suburban, and you have rural in many ways. You go to the northeast portion of Westchester, Pound Ridge and North Salem and some of those areas, and it's horse farms. So you have really everything in Westchester that you can imagine, and just a hop, skip, and jump away from the capital of the world, in New York City. But we have a system right now that is just no longer sustainable. And unless we fix it today, we're going to continue to have a very large outflow of residents here in Westchester and in New York, going somewhere else where they can set up shop and make and create jobs and live. But I look at my kids and how many people, and you can raise your hand, how many people can say that you have had a better life than your parents? I know I can say that. How many people in this room can say that your kids or your grandchildren will have a better life than you or your children? And I bet the answer to most is going to be no. And so, look, we owe it. We owe it to our kids, and I really mean that. When I look at my little kids, I just as you do, you want the best for them, and I know the best is not on tap for them, and there is no way in hell they're going to be able to live here. And I don't want to have to visit my kids in North Carolina or Texas or Arizona on the holidays. I'd like to see them every day and see their children, my grandchildren one day. I can't think I'm going to have grandchildren one day when I have little kids. But that's really what this fight is all about, and we've got to do it. So the biggest issue is the budget, but this year we were able to sit down with the Board of Legislators, the Republicans and the Democrats, in one room, work out what we thought was a good compromise. There are areas in the budget which I did disagree on, and I made some targeted vetoes, which the board will vote on, I believe, tomorrow night or Thursday night to override or sustain. And particularly, there were issues like childcare. Now, I'm sure a lot of people have heard about it. How can this guy be so cold-hearted and make cuts to daycare subsidies? Well, as you know, there are always two sides to a story, so let me tell you the other side to the story. We didn't make cuts to daycare. We tried to expand it. And the way you do that is by raising the level of parent share a few extra dollars to the same level, by the way, that New York City parents are paying and most other parents in the rest of the counties in New York State. We are charging parents, now this is not mandated, by the way. This is non-mandated daycare that the county has taken on itself. The mandated programs are not changing. That's based on federal income levels, poverty levels, etc. That will continue, always hasn't been touched. The levels that were established by this county over the years, multiple levels for higher incomes as you go. The parent pays 15% of the first child. Every child thereafter in that family is free. What we have said is we believe the levels should go back to where they were in 2006 to 35% for the first child. Every other child is free. And that is the same level that they pay in New York City and in all the other counties. Now, what that would do is take the amount of children that we can serve from its current level to adding more than 600 eligible families. So at least 600 new children can take part in this daycare subsidy. That's the reason why we asked to have the parent share raised a little bit to the level that was appropriate for most other counties in New York City. So we're not cutting daycare. We're asking those parents who are on it today to pay a little bit more so 600 new families can take part in that. And that's an issue that often gets clouded in a lot of different ways, and sometimes in politics. But that's our perspective. Trying to think of some of the other flashpoints. There were issues within the Department of Social Services where there were cuts made to within the department to early intervention for child care. And some other areas that our own commissioners said were very dangerous that the board did, that quite frankly worries us. And so I sent some vetoes down on those specific areas because we know, as per the commissioners, if things stay the same, we are going to have some big deficits within the Department of Social Services next year. For instance, I just mentioned the child care. The commissioners said to the Board of Legislators, if you keep the parent share the way it is, we will run out of money for this program by October. If you raise it a little bit, we will definitely get through the year and be able to put 600 new people on it. Now, the board chose to keep the levels as they are. The money is going to run out, most likely, in October, which means nobody will get any subsidies for daycare who do not qualify over and above the poverty level. That's the other side of the story that sometimes is not told by the headlines. So a lot of very difficult parts of the budget, clearly, that we have to deal with, and we're going to monitor everything throughout the year. The good news is no property tax increase in the county level for the second year in a row. Essential services stay strong, and the other one is that we're now promoting economic development. And I'm happy to say I can't take credit for every job created, but I can say that I think that we have changed the dialogue in this county, that we have tried to make it a little bit more business friendly by looking at some of the regulations in this county. We have a health department that needs to enforce the regulations, but also needs to have some common sense when dealing with businesses. And I think that's an issue that we made some changes on. We now have the lowest unemployment, or one of the lowest unemployment rates in all of New York State. When we started in 2010 in January, the unemployment was about 8.5%. It's down to about 6.2 in Westchester, and jobs are being created. New people are starting to start small businesses, which is the backbone, really, of the economy anywhere. But we've also had some big successes in keeping some of the big corporations here. Pepsi Bottling in Somers, with their 900 jobs, had one foot out the door going to Plano, Texas, where their bottling plant was. And one of the first things we confronted was Governor Patterson's proposal to put a sugar tax on beverages. Now, the issue with that is it was going to go towards children's health. It was going to the general fund to make up a budget deficit, believe me. And yet Pepsi, that was the last straw for them. We worked vociferously with the state to kill that proposal, and it did. And Pepsi re-signed for another 10 years, and they're expanding in Westchester. Atlas Air, which is the #1 global freight company in the world, most people don't even know them. They're in purchase, and they've got almost 500 employees. They, too, were ready to go to North Carolina with some big tax incentives, where the cost of living and the cost of labor is 25 to 35% less than it is here. And they were ready to go, and we worked with them by meeting with the CEOs and the corporate leaders, big, small, and medium. I mean, I go in, when I come to diners, too, I stop and ask the owner, how's it going? You know, is there anything that we can do, even on a local level, to try to help you? Because sometimes it's a small issue that is driving them crazy, that is costing them money or time, that says, you know what, the hell with this. I don't need to stay here. And there you go. You got another building shuttered. So there's a little thing here and there. As long as you communicate, you can find out these issues and you can address them. So one of the first things we did was to go to, and I called, the big companies in Westchester and said, I'd like to sit down in your office, meet your employees, and to see what are the issues. So Atlas Air was having a big issue, and we met with them. We worked with the state, and Atlas Air is staying. But, a lot of it was playing defense, just keeping what we have, because it was so easy for them to leave to go somewhere else where the costs were so much cheaper. But now we got to start playing offense, and we are. where we're reaching out to companies saying, hey, look at Westchester. You know, right up Route 1 or up 95, they're doing a good job in Fairfield County, particularly Stamford, and to some extent with the financial services industry in Greenwich, to bring people up out of New York or Westchester. And we're trying to say, hey, wait a minute, we're over here. Great quality of life. If you like golf, great golf courses. But we also have a lot of advantages here. Great education system, a great transportation network, closer to New York City. How do we get you to Westchester? And people are starting to look at Westchester in a different way now. And I think that's a good thing, because as they're willing to take risks and come here, that'll simply help more and more people get back to work, and it'll help everything that we do in Westchester. So a biotech cluster and a biotech industry is vibrant, and people don't even know about it. But we're getting very close to becoming, and people might, snicker at this, we're getting closer and closer to becoming the next Cambridge or Palo Alto in this country, or the Triangle in North Carolina. We've got a corridor on 9A in Mount Pleasant, Greenburgh, and Yonkers that is going to be rivaling anyone else in biotech industry, in incubators, in research and development, and they all like to be near each other. And so we're reaching out saying, come on in. And these are high-tech, high-skilled jobs that are the next generation of finding out cures for diseases, muscular dystrophy, all these, and they're happening right here in Westchester County. So we're doing our best to work with the developers, to work with the real estate agents, and with these companies to say, come here.
At the risk of seeming rude, and I don't want to, but I do know that you have to leave.
Yep.
And I do know that there are questions out there.
Sure.
So I would like to,
No, I'm
sorry,
good. No,
but
I would have gone on. I'm glad.
I don't want to knock your focus. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Carolyn?
So, there's two little rules about the questions. The first is please identify yourself. And the second is please, no preambles. Straight questions.
No whereases.
Yes, whereas.
Yes. Oh,
The
sorry.
microphone is here, has to be turned on.
Talk straight into it.
Hi, I'm Carolyn. No, it's not working. Is it?
Yeah, it's working.
Doesn't sound like it. I'm Carolyn Mamaroneck. Just two things. First, when you're thinking of incubating businesses and bringing them, don't forget Larchmont and Mamaroneck, down in Mamaroneck for all of us. But my question is about flooding. What is your perspective, your sense of what the county role is in flooding as it relates to our area?
Great. I never thought flooding would come up here. Flooding is obviously a huge issue, but it's not just here on the Sound. It is a major issue really all over the place. And a lot of it has been because, in some ways, development had gone unchecked for a long time, and regulations that were not in place that affected not just where the development was happening, but in different areas of the county where the stream would flow. All of a sudden people said, hey, that big development up the road is causing issues over here. So comprehensively, we've got to look at the issues of flooding. Now, I'll tell you a story, and this is just, government at its best. The issue with flooding and the Sheldrake. I went down to Washington, D.C. in June and met with the Army Corps of Engineers. I'm still, flabbergasted at this. I go down there, and we're talking about flooding in Westchester and the Sheldrake and all the issues along the Sound, and, do you know how much damage had been done and all this stuff? And they said, yes, no, we are aware of all the issues. And we've been studying this. And they take out the study. We've been studying this since 1953. Yeah. Dwight Eisenhower's picture was on the wall. And I said, you got to be kidding me. I said, at what point, what century, actually, do you go from studying to actually fixing the problem? And, it's like the scarecrow. They blame Congress for passing new regulations and requiring almost every project to go to Congress, and then it becomes all political. And then Congress says, no, they've got it goes on and on and on. Part of it, obviously, is financial, because these projects are big bucks if you're going to really fix the problem. And there are three ways to fix them. The least costly is to clear the debris and clear areas, some of which we've been doing on our own. The Bronx River, we chose to be the first spot. And the reason why we chose the Bronx River, and we did it in early November, was because the county owns the Bronx River. We control the Bronx River. We didn't need permits from Washington or Albany. We went in there, and I put my boots on, and we cleared a lot of debris from the Bronx River, which we think will alleviate some areas, you know, in Scarsdale and White Plains and Bronxville that have traditionally been flooded out or gotten worse through the years. The second issue really is dredging. And dredging now starts to get up to big bucks, where you actually have to get a lot of permits, including in most waterways from the federal government, the Army Corps, where you have to get permits from the state, from the DEC. But that's a lot of work, that's a lot of studies, and that's a lot of money. And the third thing, which is the biggest tag, is rechanneling. And when you rechannel, when you actually move a river in a new direction and change the flow, that's enormous amount of money, and that's an enormous amount of time. So the good news is they're on it. The bad news is they're still on it. So we continue to work on a local level. The board, along with my administration, passed a law this past fall, I believe, or maybe summer, where we had a flood task force and mitigation, a committee that's actually studying, it's called a reconnaissance plan. We're really studying the large view, not every street. We got a lot of complaints during the floods. If you don't come on my, cul-de-sac and fix it, I'm never voting for you again. So look, we can't be on every street and fix every little puddle and problem. But the bigger things we've got to take a look at and spend money where it is wise and where it would actually fix a larger problem. So we're in the process of doing that. I've made my appointments to that committee. The board is still figuring out who they want to put on, and they'll get to that soon. But we've got to look at the big problems. One myth that needs to be cleared up. I know in 2007, the former county executive came and issued a press release saying that he's starting a $10 million a year, $50 million flood mitigation fund. There is no money there. There never has been any money there. It was a press release. There is no money in the budget for flood. Now what we do is identify particular projects, and we can allocate money by going out to borrow for some of that. And that's one of the things that we're in the middle of trying to identify. We had some projects that, Gardens Lake, we did that with Mamaroneck. We had a sluice gate problem, and we're fixing. So there are about 5 projects underway right now, Tarrytown, Scarsdale, this area, that we're currently working on. And then we're working with the communities, but in most instances, the communities have to pay 50% of the bill. So if it's truly a problem that they want fixed, they've got to come up with the money and then work with the county, and we'll put the other half in. So we are working on it, but there's a lot of frustrations. Yes, sir.
Question about eviction prevention funding. Over the last 10 years, the county has funded eviction prevention that this community has received. About $5,000 a year, which we leverage about 5 times. So in the height of the recession, we gave out $40,000 of eviction prevention. Last year, $25,000. This year, I'm anticipating a minimum of $15,000, but the county share is frozen in the county's dispute with HUD. The West Help Shelter is also closed. Frankly, what is going to happen this winter as families run out of the ability to pay their rent, and we're trying to mitigate the effects of that rather than have them go into the shelter system?
Well, there's a couple things. First of all, we have a lot of money for eviction prevention that's in the budget in various aspects through various programs. Most of it is federal, that we do receive money. I believe there's some state funding for that too, but most of it is federal. The homeless shelter issue is one that, again, we need to address because the headlines were bad, but the story makes sense. Last year, we proposed, and we did, close 2 of our 12 shelters in our system. Why would he do that? The reason why we did that is it's a success story. We were able to get people out of temporary shelters and into permanent housing much faster. And the second part is we are paying for contracts that force us to pay 100% occupancy when in fact we had 55% occupancy. It's a complete waste of money. And that money then, again, that's wasted on a contract that's not serving anybody, is coming at the expense of something else. So in our 12 shelters, we were able to cancel contracts with 2, have 10 shelters in the system, and still have about a vacancy factor of 20%. So the system is working. That's where we're able to make and find savings, yet still make sure that the problem is being solved or addressed. So the headlines are throwing people out in the street, not the reality. The reality is we were able to close 2 shelters, a good thing, and still be able to get people out of those shelters fast and into scattered site housing or permanent housing where they can actually get back on their feet and have a place to really live as opposed to a place where they're just staying for a long period of time. Let me address the greater issue, which you mentioned about HUD and the frozen money. We are, as most of you know, a housing settlement that the county entered into in 2009. I was opposed to the settlement in 2009 when I was running for the exact same problems that are coming back to haunt us today. This went from a straightforward housing settlement where the county had to build 750 units of fair and affordable housing over 7 years to something that has become a large, absolutely different settlement in the eyes of the federal government. Now, I'm proud to say that since I took office in January, we have over 300 units. We have over 200 already financed, and most of them with building permits and under construction. Another over 100 that are in the pipeline, and another 100 that we're working on. So we're getting almost half of what we've got to build is almost in the pipeline in 2 years. We've got 7 years to do it. And after the first year, which would be in just a few more days, if we didn't reach a certain number, which would be 100, we would start to get fined. So we're way above schedule, and we're working cooperatively with 31 eligible communities in this settlement. Now, eligibility is defined as, by the 2000 census, 7% or less Hispanic, 3% or less African American population per community. 2000 census. In this time, we have been finding locations, working with developers, working with local communities to find suitable locations that fit the eligibility criteria. And the monitor, the federal housing monitor, has signed off on all this stuff. Even though we don't need his permission technically, we've gone to him and said, we want to be proactive. Do you agree with us that this fits the criteria? And he said yes. On May 13th of this year, we get a letter from the federal government, from HUD, and they admit that what they were demanding in this letter was going to be, quote, outside the 4 corners of the settlement or the agreement, meaning that what they're going to demand, they understood to not be in the settlement. Now, what they want was the following. They wanted half of the units to be at least 3 bedrooms or more. Now, the problem with that is the $51 million we had set aside to build the 750 units, the price tag would go from $50 million to $100 million. We're paying for this. The second part is, in HUD's view, HUD does not want, in essence, zoning. HUD feels that any zoning is an impediment to fair housing. Well, look, zoning is exclusionary to some extent, clearly, because as a community under the right of the New York State Constitution plans itself, you set up different areas. This is a commercial zone. Back there is a neighborhood, etc. In HUD's view, there should be no zoning because environmental laws like watershed regulations, water and sewer, height restrictions, zoning density, number of units, which affect schools too, all of those things should be abolished in HUD's view. And so HUD gave us 90 days to let every community know that if they do not begin the process of revamping or destroying their entire zoning code, that we as a county would start suing each municipality. Now, I said, you are out of your minds. There is no way we're doing that, especially since we're working cooperatively with every community and finding housing and building housing. That is the essence of this settlement. Now, HUD said not good enough. They want us to start suing if the communities don't do this. The other point that we're at an impasse at right now, that's one of them, is what's called a source of income law. Now, again, source of income law, some will say property owners, individual rights. You cannot discriminate against where somebody, a prospective tenant or renter or buyer, gets their income. Okay, that's fine. However, when you take it to the next level, HUD is demanding and mandating any individual that owns property from 4 units or more, so you could have two-family houses that you rent out as part of your income. If you're at that threshold or higher, you must accept Section 8 housing vouchers. Now, I have nothing against Section 8. It's a good program. It's worked very well. However, Section 8, and any time you take a dollar from the federal government, you have a lot of rules and regulations that go with it. And if an individual that owns property wishes to take Section 8 as part of their income and as part of their business plan, that's fine. But you should not be required by the federal government. It is not federal law. It is not state law. Congress has never passed it. They refuse to do so. And the state, Governor Patterson, vetoed this similar type of thing. So we're at an impasse over 2 issues now that, unfortunately, this is probably going back to the federal court to decide on these 2 particular issues. But I think if Washington wins this, you're now going to have bureaucrats in D.C. figuring out housing and planning for Westchester and every other community in this country. I don't think that's a good thing. I think the people that sit on our zoning boards and planning boards and our town councils, they're the ones that the Constitution vests the right with, and this is where these decisions should stay. Now, let me say this, and I'll say it very clearly. If discrimination exists, and it does everywhere in the world, if discrimination exists, if a real estate agent refuses to show a property to a minority, to anyone, then that person should be prosecuted, period. But I don't think it exists on the level that HUD is saying, where it is across the board, happens everywhere, it's ingrained in our country, it's ingrained in our county that we are a segregated and discriminatory county. That's HUD's words. It's never been proven in court. It's never been admitted by the county. In fact, the studies show just the opposite. We are a very welcoming county. And here's the crazy part of this, and then I'll leave you with that. The crazy part is, when the 2010 census comes out, Westchester is now the 4th most diverse county in New York State. We are tied with Manhattan in diversity. Tied with Manhattan. And in those past 10 years, we have had a 56% increase in minority population in those 31 eligible communities. People live where they want to live, choose where they want to live, and they live where they can afford. I can't afford, as much as I'd love certain areas of Larchmont, I cannot afford to live here. I'm a humble public servant. I could not. I am not barred from living here. Nobody is barred from living anywhere. Now, are there income disparities? Of course there is. But it is not preventing people based on the color of their skin to live in communities. So it's a major issue right now that has national consequences, which is getting national attention now from the national media too, because HUD has taken the case in Westchester, and they've done it in Dallas, they did it in Marin County in San Francisco, and they're marching into other communities saying what we did in Westchester is really what we're going to do throughout the country in local communities. So we feel very, very strongly that there are some very individual rights here that are at stake that we need to defend, and the planning and zoning of our own county and state constitution that we need to defend on this issue. Everything else we agree with in that settlement, and we're doing it. That's not the issue. But it comes down to 2 big issues that have major consequences that we feel are worth fighting. So with that, I can't believe we didn't talk about Playland, but I will next time. Just a real fast, and I got to go. Playland, we had a request for proposals to reinvent the property. We received 12 proposals, most of which didn't really cut the mustard. Some did. We're looking at those. we can, and I'm going to decide next couple of months, we can pick and choose some of the ideas in those proposals. We can go back to the drawing board and start all over again. Playland is going to be open for the 12 season as is, and we're really looking at 13 and beyond, and where we would start changing what we see and do at Playland to make it more, more competitive really with other entertainment values, because it's gotten very run down, and to make it financially stable, so we're not pouring millions and millions of dollars each year in a losing proposition that comes from other places within the budget. So with that, I will let you eat your eggs. I will say Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, have a wonderful, blessed, and healthy 2012, and y'all let me come back now, okay? Thank you.
I'm so sorry we didn't have time for more questions. I know I don't know if it frustrates you, but it frustrates everybody here.
Well, you can always, and one thing I've always asked is, please email me, because a lot of times what I find is I'll speak wherever, and for whatever reason you may not want to ask a question in a group setting, or you drive home, I should ask them this. Just send me an email, and we get back to you immediately. And if it's not our issue, we will get you the right person in the state or whomever. But we will get you a response as soon as possible. So just send me an email, CE, which stands for County Executive, CE@westchestergov.com. We have a little handout of
It's
just
on the
some
back
of
of
the
this
snapshot.
handout, the email address, if anybody
Yeah.
wants to get to it.
Okay? Thank you again. See you soon.
Thank you very much. We're sorry we had to have a shorter meeting because of the county executive schedule, but we didn't have time earlier for any announcements from the group. Is there anyone that wants to make an announcement for everyone in the group? Anyone? How about the Martin Luther King announcement? Kay Francis? Would you like to make the announcement?
Elaine, she's got him out.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Martin Luther King celebration. The annual one will occur on the 11th of January, 7:30, Comic School. We have an incredible special speaker, Dr. James Forbes, formerly of Riverside Church, one of the great speakers, men working on the kinds of issues that Martin Luther King exemplified. We also have two very special honorees. One of them will be both of them will be very known to this group. It'll be announced very shortly. So please don't forget, get people to come out. This will be very special.
And it's going to be at the Homics this
At
year.
the Comic School.
Right, at 7:30.
7:30, the 11th of January, so Wednesday night.
Yes. Where's the other mic?
Since I'm sitting on
Oh, here it is, sorry.
running a not-for-profit come holiday season, instead of giving presents, we send out a letter to everybody asking for presents, because it's the time we do our annual appeal. And that just landed, and the support we've had from this community and from the summit over the last 5 years has just been outstanding. So I just want to say thank you so much. The eviction prevention question, we cleaned out our funds with Irene. So we're going into this winter with no money except for the St. Thomas Church pumpkin sale, which half of it went to Washingtonville Housing Alliance for eviction prevention. So just to say thank you. And on the subject of Martin Luther King and the whole question of race prejudice, there's a two-part series. I believe the second part is this Sunday on CBS, on the history of African Americans in the NFL, and a very sad story with the sound mixing and the music by a cousin of ours. Apparently it's a spectacular show. So anyone who is a football fan and wants to see something that is deeply rooted in the history of this country, I recommend it to them. I suppose it's supposed to be fantastic.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Zoe from Hispanic Resource Center. Just wanted to say that finally, after 3 months, we're back in our office space. And all of you, so many of you in this room have supported us over the years, so thank you again. And we're very happy to be back, and we're coming back stronger, and we have metal furniture now.
I know. Hello? I know that many of you felt very frustrated by being unable to ask many of the questions that you brought today. I would like to ask you to forward those questions to me, and I will send them along to the county exec to see that they get addressed and hopefully answered, and I will get back to you. So please do that. Yes?
Your email?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. My email is echapnick@verizon.net. echapnick@verizon.net. And I'll send those along, because I think there was a lot of frustration in this room. We thought there would be more time. Yes.
Hi, Kate Yellen, British House. I just want to wish everyone happy holidays. And to let you know that we have no beds. We have clients coming in, the thing that they want most of all, of course, is a bed to sleep on. And we just never have enough beds. The beds we got from United Way are now gone. So sometimes people don't realize that we do take used beds. As long as they're in good condition, stay free. So if you know anybody who thinks they're getting rid of that twin bed or box spring or whatever in the attic, please have them on.
So you're talking mattresses.
Mattresses and those metal rings. It used to be free. You just throw it away because you already had one. Those cost like $55 in the stores now, so we take those as well.
A friend of mine asked about sleeper soaps.
We don't take sleeper soaps because they're just too heavy. You know, we offer a very low cost delivery service, very low cost pickup, and it's just, they're just.
I was thinking of it as a
I
bed.
know. Thank you all.
Yes. Where's the mic?
I see that there are some new people here. We have extra copies of our local summit, community service directory, all of the not-for-profits in the area that support the Larchmont Mamaroneck community, that need your support also. So I'm going to leave some in the back there to pick up as you go out. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
Since this seems to be promo time,
Absolutely.
Jeff Negan, on behalf of the Mamaroneck Library, thank you for passing our budget. And we have a new director coming January 16th from Susan Riley, who was formerly of Mount Kisco. Very experienced and a lot of new programs, so watch out for us and come visit us.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? George never needs a microphone.
Your attention, please.
George doesn't need a microphone.
Sorry we're a little late, but Judy Myers and I want to wish you all a very happy holiday. And we have a candy cane for you. Don't say you never got nothing from the state of New York and the county of Westchester.
How much can it cost?
$1.70.
You know what, I'll
Anyone else? How can you top that? Anyone else? Yes. Quiet, please. Yeah, go ahead.
Nancy Seligson, Supervisor-elect for the town of Mamaroneck. This is the anti-Christmas announcement that we're starting the process of revaluation, reassessment. I just wanted to let you all know that we've had workshops that are open to the public, and I hope that you've taken advantage of it and participated. If not, there will be more in the future. There'll be a letter coming out from the town explaining it once again. And please feel free to contact the town if you have any questions or concerns. And we're also available to create a workshop for the summit.
The League of Women Voters.
Yes, and the League of Women Voters on January 6th will be having a representative from the consultants doing the contractors actually doing the reassessment. Yes, that is part of it. That's the start of it.
Any other announcements? Well, thank you all for coming. I don't know what to say because our question period was not as robust as we had hoped. That's what happens. That's all I can say. But do send me your questions and I will pass them along.
Give your email
Thank you.
again, please.
Oh, my email is echapnick, CHAPNICK, @verizon.net.